Joining us today on Midnight Mania Sports is Indiana Pacers reporter for The Athletic, Scott Agness. Scott, thank you for taking time to call into the show.
Absolutely. Happy to be on with you guys.
So, Scott, how did you get to the point where you are now covering The Athletic for the Pacers?
Oh, boy, where do I begin? Biggest thing for me was staying always involved within sports. So no matter where I was, no matter what I was doing, I always had a keen eye for sports. So my biggest end, I would say, at the very beginning was being a ball boy for the Pacers and the Indiana Fever for almost 10 years. And from there, I kind of networked my way up, learned of an opening within the franchise, and started out actually working for the team out of graduation for their .com, covering the team that I had worked for and where I already had known people. And the biggest break, I would say, for me, too, also was while a student at Indiana University. I just went ahead and launched my own site, figuring that I was at all these sporting events anyway. I might as well write about it and share my thoughts. So between those two things, I was discovered, if you will, and The Athletic reached out to me wanting to launch an Indiana outlet, part of the Athletic, and I was their first hire, and now in year 2, and I'm loving every minute of it.
That's awesome.
Congratulations, Scott, on getting the job with The Athletic. And it's been a couple of seasons since the Pacers traded away Paul George. Do you remember what that response was in Indiana back then and how that trade paid off, in your opinion?
Yeah, I still remember the fact that Pacer fans are upset, frustrated, annoyed with Paul George with how all that went down, because the biggest issue with it wasn't that he informed Pacers officials or that he wanted out. It was the timing of the whole thing. It was the fact that it was just a couple days before free agency. It didn't really give the team a lot of options. And in doing so, kind of cripple what Kevin Pritchard, the Pacers president, who was, a couple months on the job taking over for Larry Bird. So he was still trying to get things straightened out to his liking once he took over. So the Pacers fans were just frustrated with Paul, the fact that he had talked all this talk about trying to provide Indiana with their first NBA title, and then a couple days later wanting out, being moved, and the fact that many weren't aware of what Domantas Sabonis was. They know Victor Oladipo and were big fans of his because of what he did at Indiana University. But Sabonis, to many people around the league, was an unknown quantity. And now, as it looked out, the trade worked out excellent for both sides. The Pacers getting 2 All-Stars out of the deals, which is exactly, or even better, what they were hoping for.
And you mentioned Sabonis, who was an All-Star this season. How did he develop into such a complete player?
I think he just needed opportunity, and he needed to be used in the right way. In the last couple of years, his first 2 in Indy after his rookie year in OKC, they moved him to the 5 position rather than the 4 position like OKC was using him. They were using him more as a floor spacer. They wanted and encouraged him to shoot threes, whereas here with the Pacers, they really wanted him to be that post presence that he is. And so he was able to have success rebounding. He was able to do an excellent job on the interior and becoming that automatic double-double machine that he is. And then this year he's playing 10 minutes more per game, and his numbers have risen as a result of it.
Another player you mentioned in that trade was Victor Oladipo, who recently returned from injury. What does Oladipo mean to this team and their chances of making a deep playoff run?
Yeah, he means everything, because without him, they'll still be a playoff team, no doubt about it. Just the East is not that strong, and this is a good group as it's currently made up. They just lacked an all-star or some playmakers, and we saw that become ever clear in the postseason last year when they really struggled against the Boston Celtics, right? They got swept and really had no answer at late in games. Who did they go to? Well, Kevin Pritchard completely tore up the roster and brought in 9 new players this year. Couple of new starters, including T.J. Warren, who leads the team in scoring this year. Sabonis has grown into an all-star. But to your question, with Oladipo back in the fold, it gives them bigger game possibilities. It gives them a chance to get out of the first round for the first time in 6 years, because they've reached the postseason the last 4, but haven't been able to win a series in any of that stretch, and all of those have been under Coach Nate McMillan. So I know he, as well as the team, is very much looking forward to trying to be a second round and third round team, because the ceiling, I think, to this roster is to reach the conference finals as it's currently presented. Right? They're not a championship contending roster, but if everything clicked, I think there's a slight chance they could even reach their way to the conference finals.
And since Oladipo's return, he's been averaging 11 points a game across 4 starts. Do you see the Pacers giving him a long-term contract extension once his contract expires after the 2020-2021 season?
Well, that's got to be their number one priority this summer. He's eligible for an extension, and there have been discussions ongoing even this year. Those could have started as early as last fall, but there was nothing concrete, and it actually benefits Victor to wait a little bit, wait until this summer and straighten things out. But that has to be the Pacers' number one priority for 2 reasons. Number one, he's their best player, and you need the best player of your franchise under contract for these next few years, right? Secondly, all the rest of their core is. Everybody within their rotation right now, except for Justin Holiday. So of those 9 players, all of them are under contract next season. And so to get Victor for the long term, for say another 3 years past next year, that's crucial, I think, to the Pacers' success. Otherwise, it's not nearly to this point, but then you have to think about trading him like you did Paul George, because you hate to lose an asset for no value at all in free agency.
The Pacers made a trade earlier this season with the Suns for Daxon Miles Jr., and he has been making his case for why he should be on the official roster, averaging 15 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists per game in the G League. Do you see him coming up and being on the team?
No. Pacers have a full roster right now, so they have no guaranteed spots available, and both their two-way roster spots are available. So there would be no movement, at least this season, with changing up the roster.
Currently sitting at the 6th seed in the East, what do they have to do down the stretch to make sure they can secure a playoff spot and move up in the Eastern Conference seeding?
Yeah, that's critical, because where you want to be, obviously, is at least the 4th spot, where you do have home court advantage in round 1, which has eluded them. I could easily see them moving past Philadelphia, who's currently just 2 games in front of them. I don't trust Philadelphia. I'm not sure why they tinkered with the roster so significantly this offseason. Al Horford's been a big disappointment. They didn't bring back T.J. McConnell, who's been a real bright spot, right, for this Pacers team. And at the same time, I thought J.J. Redick was core to everything the 76ers are doing, and he left in free agency. I think the biggest thing, guys, that we've seen from this Pacers team that needs to change is their ability to close games, because that's been their problem here for these first 2 weeks in February when they went on that 6-game losing streak. They were winning or at least even with their opponent with 4 or 5 minutes left in each of those games. And they didn't get stops. They were out-rebounded, outscored, and struggled down the stretch in every one of them, and that's the big reason why they lost. So I think they have to, as Coach McMillan likes to say, play a full 48-minute game. Yes, it's cliche, but it's never rung more true for this Pacers team right now, because they've played really good stretches of basketball.
They have.
But they're closing – the way in which they have failed to close games has been troubling.
Well, Scott, it's going to be a very exciting next couple of months for Pacers fans. We want to thank you for calling in today to help talk Pacers basketball with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.